Hello, this is my public speaking talk number 2, informative speech, and this is my audience. Have you ever walked by a group of jazz musicians and have asked yourself, where did jazz originate from? Now, once you learn this information, you can actually go to a jazz musician or go to a music friend of yours and say, hey, I know jazz. Now, that is one thing you guys would have in common ground, jazz. Now, I'm going to be talking about the beginnings of jazz music, the swing era of jazz music, and modern jazz. See, jazz actually originated from New Orleans as it started around the start of 20th century, and as it started becoming a soloist piano music in sporting houses. Now, these jazz music continued and continue on as actually riverboats in New Orleans took this jazz music up in the northern coasts and eastern coasts. Now, this quickly turned jazz into both a musical and cultural phenomenon, and actually the author F. Scott Fitzgerald dubbed this era of jazz age. Now, we are going to be continuing into the swing era as the swing era started slowly being introduced to jazz age. Now, you might be wondering, what is swing? Swing is actually 1, 2, 3, 4. Instead of the traditional music count, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Now, the reason why this is added as it makes the longer instead of just and. Now, it was also known as the big band era, which has 3 amazing musicians that continue to make this swing era more and more and more. Now, for example, we got pianist Duke Ellington, pianist Count Basie, and our clarinetist Benny Goldman, which was actually the king of swing. Now, as the swing era started becoming slowly introduced into modern jazz, the reason why modern jazz is a thing today because many phenomenal musicians decided to, hey, why don't we have jazz with no rules? And why don't we have jazz just, become jazz? And now we come into modern jazz, which is many musicians starts playing modern jazz as is, there's no right, there's no wrong, and you can just play a wrong note and be like, that's jazz. Now, modern jazz actually made many different genres as you know today. For example, rock. You can think of rock as jazz with distortion. For example, hip hop as well. Now, modern jazz, it became more into no right, no wrong, and actually modal and free jazz turned into mainstream jazz. Now, have you ever walked by a group of jazz musicians and ask yourself, where does jazz come from? Well, now you have that answer today. You have the answer of knowing where did jazz come from. You can go up to a jazz musician now, go up to a friend and be like, I know where jazz is from. Do you know where it is? Sometimes they might say yes, but that's all right. Now, past American jazz is not what it used to be as today. But many jazz music is actually being played throughout high school and colleges. So jazz can continue and continues being alive. Some people might say jazz is dying, but it actually continues being alive and being played throughout high school and colleges. These are my audiences.